Hello everyone, how are you doing today? My name is Jessie and I am a screenwriter, and on this channel I talk about screenwriting and other related topics. And today I'm doing another episode of Grad School is Over, so now I just assigned myself homework. Today's topic, Riverdale. Now, we all know Riverdale. It's the CW adaptation of the Archie comics that puts a dark and sinister twist on your favorite bland white teenagers from the 50s. Cool. I'll take 6 seasons and 2 spin-offs, please. People love to rag on this show for being outlandish and cringy, but that's not what I'm here to do today. For one, I haven't actually seen Riverdale past season 1, so I can't really say with any authority whether or not it's good. But also, there's thousands of videos on YouTube talking about everything wrong with Riverdale, so there's really nothing left for me to add to this conversation. No, what I'm here to do today is introduce you to the history of the Archie comics that led up to Riverdale, because it's a journey and I really haven't seen anyone talking about it, so that's what I'm gonna do today. Buckle up, folks, we are in for a ride. If you're an Archie layman, you may be surprised to find out that the gritty murder mystery version of the comics that we see in Riverdale is far from the weirdest iteration of these characters. It turns out that the comic series following intentionally mundane characters immortalized in the perfect small American town is actually really wild. But I guess that makes sense. I mean, when you give us bland characters in a love triangle, you're basically just giving fanfiction writers a blank slate and saying, have at it. One of the creators of the comics, John L. Goldwater, once said of Archie, quote, "He's basically a square, but in my opinion, the squares are the backbone of America," end quote. Okay. This is the Archie canon in essence. White, traditional, and family-friendly. And this becomes obvious when you look at who in the past has been allowed to use the IP. Parodies of the Archie characters have existed pretty much throughout the existence of the comics, but the owners of the Archie copyright often pursued legal action because they didn't want Archie's brand to be tainted. So, while Christian publications were given a license to produce Archie comics featuring Archie and friends learning about biblical values, a 2003 play exploring Archie going to college and coming out as gay was met with a cease and desist. Real subtle, guys. However, the tides changed in 2010 after a company regime change, and Archie seemed to be making up for lost time. The comic started tackling more serious subjects, and Kevin Keller, the first openly gay character, was introduced in September of that year. I believe the tagline was, "Introducing Kevin Keller, Riverdale's mild, non-threatening gay friend." I'm kidding. Although Kevin is very much the palatable gay friend, his introduction actually went over pretty well. People liked that he was a well-rounded character who had traits outside of just his sexuality, you know? He wasn't just gay, he was also an army brat, and he liked journalism, and he was allergic to strawberries. We also got Afterlife with Archie, which was a horror comic about Riverdale in the midst of a zombie apocalypse, and this kicked off a whole string of horror and thriller comics, including The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. Is this starting to sound familiar? Okay, but let's go back to that gay Archie play from 2003 for a minute. It was produced by the Dad's Garage Theater right here in Atlanta. Well, this is YouTube, but I'm in Atlanta, so right here in Atlanta. It was originally titled Archie's Weird Fantasy, but it was renamed Weird Comic Book Fantasy after the cease and desist, and all of the character names were changed. Now, I believe this is a reference to the comic series Weird Fantasy, which Archie actually pens in the play. However, it is interesting to note the similarity to the 1999 comic series Archie's Weird Mysteries, which, if you have not seen it, it's iconic.
Oh, Archiekins, you can't hide from the potatoes.
I couldn't find any video of the play, but I did piece together the plot from reviews and such, and it goes as follows. Archie introduces us to his friends in Riverdale and tells the audience that he is gay, saying that Dilton Doily is the first boy that he ever kissed. He goes to college and he enters a relationship with his roommate, Nathan Leopold, who plots behind his back to commit murder with his partner, Richard Loeb. To be entirely fair to the people at Archie Comics here, the cease and desist may not have been related to the gay thing. So after his college run-in with real-life murderers, Archie moves to New York and he gets a job writing comics where he eventually becomes entangled in the Frederick Wortham Senate hearings, which, if you don't know, was basically just Senate hearings to discuss the impact that violent and sexual comic books were having on the youth. I'm not entirely sure what the aim of this play was in terms of overall themes or even story. All that's really left of it is bits and pieces of plot out of context, but if nothing else, it was one of the first instances that I noticed of the Archie characters diving into much darker and deeper subject matter. Oh, and one more thing. The author of the play is Roberto Aguirre Sacasa, aka the current chief creative officer of Archie Comics and the creator of Riverdale. Now that's some karmic justice right there. I kind of buried the lead on that one, but I think it was worth it for the dramatic reveal. So, who is Roberto Aguirre Sacasa? Well, he grew up in DC as the son of a Nicaraguan diplomat. He went to Georgetown University for his undergraduate degree and he received a master's in English literature, as well as graduating from the Yale School of Drama. He also participated in a playwriting workshop under Paula effing Vogel, so needless to say, he has some major creds in the world of literature. His work has been pretty consistent over the years. He generally takes an existing work and interprets it in a new environment or tone. He's done this with the Omen movies, The Tempest, A Picture of Dorian Gray, and others. So after the whole cease and desist incident, he continued writing primarily in theater. He actually wrote the book for the American Psycho musical, and he rewrote Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark. He did dip his toe into screenwriting over the years. He worked with HBO on some superhero projects, and he wrote on Glee for 3 years. But his true love was always comics, so when the opportunity came to pitch for Marvel, he jumped on it. He wrote on a bunch of different comics, including the Fantastic Four, Nightcrawler, and Spider-Man. But the fates aligned in 2013, and he was reunited with Archie Andrews. Aguirre Sacasa jumped on board soon after the new era of Archie Comics and came out with the very popular Afterlife with Archie. Yeah, so the zombie apocalypse Archie comics were written by the same guy who did the gay Archie play and eventually created Riverdale. The puzzle pieces are starting to come together. Aguirre Sacasa even said that Riverdale would not exist without the 2003 play, but I really think that the bridge that connects these two is Afterlife with Archie, so let's take a look at it. So the comic starts off with Jughead's dog, Hot Dog, getting run over by a car, and Jughead takes him to the local teenage witch, Sabrina Spellman, and she brings him back to life, but apparently she does a pretty crap job of it because Hot Dog then bites Jughead and turns him into Jugdead, the zombie, where he promptly kills his parents, Principal Weatherby, Miss Grundy, and his girlfriend Ethel Muggs. The surviving students barricade themselves in Lodge Manor until they are forced to flee because of the growing outbreak. The first volume is honestly really cool, except for the fact that it includes the subplot where Cheryl and Jason Blossom are implied to have an incestuous relationship, which is just... why? But overall, it's not bad. The second volume is where things start to get interesting. We go back to Sabrina, who is in what appears to be a mental hospital being therapized by H.P. Lovecraft. That is not a joke, it's literally H.P. Lovecraft. She befriends some of Lovecraft's characters before being offered up in a ritual ceremony to be Cthulhu's wife. yeah, like I said, 0 to 100 real quick. And that was just the first issue. Later we find out that Reggie's a sociopath, Cheryl probably killed her brother and then changed her name to Blaze, and then Archie's mom tells him that Riverdale is protected by some sort of magic, but it requires a sacrifice every generation, and Jughead might be that sacrifice, and maybe that's why he was patient zero of the outbreak, and also the zombies are controlled by Cthulhu, I think. I don't really know anything about comic book writing, so I'm really focusing on the common denominator here, which is adaptation in a new world with darker tones. And I noticed a lot of distinct similarities between Riverdale and these comics. For one, the guy loves himself a literary illusion. The comics were described as Lovecraftian, which is a bit of an understatement when H.P. Lovecraft is a whole-ass character. And it kind of reminds me of the Riverdale episode where they did the Heathers musical, aka the best musical. From what I understand, that episode is just Riverdale doing Heathers with no real integration into the plot or the universe. Like, you like Heathers? Let's just do Heathers. Yeah, you like Lovecraft? Yeah, we'll just do Lovecraft. Don't worry about it. It feels like Aguirre Sacasa gets really into aesthetics, and that's what drives his story. And honestly, I think that's why he's so good at creating these really distinct moments that stick with you. The last scene in Afterlife with Archie shows Reggie standing in front of a horde of zombies. So Reggie is the one that killed Hot Dog, and he feels guilty. He feels like he started the apocalypse. And because of that, he's going to sacrifice himself to the zombies as, retribution. And so the zombies approach and they just start walking past him, like walking right past him. And he gets to the middle of the horde and he sees Jughead and Hot Dog, and he kneels down in front of them and just waits to die. And then Sabrina shows up with Cthulhu and it's a big cliffhanger and whatever. But that moment was so interesting and so cool and so powerful, and it stuck with me. I can still see the image in my head, and it was incredibly memorable. And it reminds me of the ending of season 1 of Riverdale, where Cheryl is stuck under the frozen lake, and Archie just doesn't think. He just goes and he starts punching the ice, and his hands are bleeding, and he doesn't even think about it. He just keeps punching and punching until he's able to pull Cheryl out of the water. And I thought it was an amazing moment. It really captured Archie's character really well, and it was a great moment in general, and it really stuck with me, obviously. The way they're both done is, in my mind, an example of exceptional writing. I think a lot of the gripes with Riverdale come from the fact that people are missing that connective thread between the seasons. Like, one minute you're in a murder mystery, and then the next season, you're in a slasher film, and they don't feel connected overall. And it kind of makes sense when you think about them in terms of comics, because, you can have Afterlife with Archie and kill everyone and turn Jughead into a zombie, and it doesn't affect your comic where Veronica's a vampire. But it doesn't really work the same in TV. If you want to have a zombie apocalypse, you have to commit to that. Zombies are canon now, and they're gonna be everywhere for the rest of the series. You want to send the kids off to college, their roommates are gonna be zombies. But honestly, I would watch that. They're just Archie's just come on, Jughead, could you walk any slower? We're gonna be late for class. I think something cool that Riverdale could have done is just acknowledge the disconnect. I mean, they could have just had it be like a comic book where every season is entirely unrelated to each other, but that is kind of boring to me. But preferably, we would just have an explanation for why so many weird things were going on in Riverdale. Remember when I mentioned the 1999 cartoon Archie's Weird Mysteries? It's a Scooby-Doo style Monster of the Week show, and the premise is that a lab experiment gone awry is causing a bunch of monsters to terrorize Riverdale, including, but not limited to, alien potatoes, tapioca pudding glob, Archie's anthropomorphized car, Betsy, a 50-foot Veronica, man-eating worm, werewolf sheriff, and many, many more. Each episode ended with an after-school style moral about laziness or vanity or, I don't know, not screwing your car?
You spoke, and you squirted oil all over Veronica.
I never understood what you saw in her. Besides, you don't need her, not when you have me. Get in.
My point is, the show gives you a blanket explanation for the monsters, and then each episode kind of acts independently from the others. Riverdale could have used something like this as an explanation for the weird things, and that could have been the connective thread between the seasons. Having everything connected to one answer as to why everything's going on makes the randomness feel more earned, and then it gives the characters a bigger goal to work towards. So, here's my pitch. Riverdale is the site of a secret government project. The town doesn't actually exist. It's just a secret military base staged to look like a small American town from the 50s, and the residents don't know this because they're the subject of the experiments. All the weird stuff like the gargoyle monster, that's a thing, right? The murder guy. That's all just part of the psychological experiments that the governments are doing on the townspeople, and they don't even know about it. It's been going on for generations. People are born into Riverdale and they die in Riverdale, never knowing that it's all fake. Of course, some people figure it out, and those people are extracted by the government and they go on to work for like the FBI or something. Archie and friends are just the next group of people on the path to finding out the secrets, and when they do, they're extracted from Riverdale just like the others, but this time is different. Archie feels guilty that all of his friends and family are still trapped in Riverdale, or rather, Project Riverdale, to live out the rest of their lives as glorified lab rats. So, he gets the gang back together for one last mission: terminate Project Riverdale and set everyone free. I swear, I should get paid for this. So what did we learn today? I'm honestly really not sure, but going forward, if Riverdale makes just a little bit more sense to you, that's good enough for me. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a comment down below, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. My links to follow me will be in the description down below, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.